We continue today with the 38th chapter of the book of Yechezkel, which is a chapter about the end of days, as it were, the end of days. So let's get into it. Vayhi davar Adonai elai lemor. So God appears to Yechezkel and says to Yechezkel the following. He says, Ben Adam, son of man, sim panecha, go and take your face, and what do you have to do? El Gog Eretz Hamagog, and turn towards Gog, the land of Magog. Nasi Rosh Meshach v'Tuval v'Yinaveh alav. And who is Gog in the land of Magog? He's the prince of Meshach and Tuval, and offer prophecy against him. So these a lot of these names are from early on in Gog and Magog, and I shouldn't say Gog. Magog is back early on in the book of Bereshit, and Tuval and Meshach. These are names that are very early on, and in a sense, it's going back to the beginning of creation, which is going back sort of to this, right? It's this mythic period. It's a sort of an apocalyptic chapter, and therefore we're going back to the beginning with, a restart, with the destruction of other things, if that makes sense. V'amarta, and say to him, Ko amar Adonai Elohim, hineni elecha Gog nasi rosh Meshach v'Tuval, and say to him, I'm coming to deal with you. I'm coming towards you. Gog, the prince of Meshach and Tuval. V'shovav ticha v'natati chachim belecha yecha. I will turn around and put hooks in your jaws. Now, if you remember, that sort of idea of putting hooks in the jaws was used with Pharaoh, with the Egyptians. Paro, think of the Nile River, think of the importance of river and water. And Paro claims he's the Tanin Hagadol, as he's called in this book. He's the great, it's usually translated as a crocodile. And so Paro, because of that, the strength that he had, and seeing himself as a god and above the waters. So here too, maybe this Gog and Magog has something to do with water as well. And that's why the pruning hooks, right? What we would say he's going fishing. Or in verse 4, Votzeti otcha v'kol cheilecha susim ufrashim levushay mechlol kulam kahal rav tzina umagein tovsei charavot kulam. And I'm going to take you out with all of your army, your horses, your riders. They're all going to be wearing their beautiful armor. It's like you're going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art or some other museum where it has beautiful displays of armor, right? With their shields and their swords and everything. Paras Kush ufut itam kulan magain v'chova, and along with you is going to be the Persians, the Kushim, Put, all the different nations. I don't remember if Put is a nation that's in supposed to be understood as located in Africa. That I don't remember. My apologies. But right, everybody's out. Everybody's got their shields. Everybody's got their helmet. Everybody's got their beautiful armor on. And okay, Gomer, he continues in 6. Gomer, v'chol agapeha beit togarma yarchitei tzafon v'et kol agapav amim rabim itach Gomer, and all of Gomer's people in Beit Togarma and the remotest parts of the north, all of the people that are allied with you, that you are in charge. Hikon, so be ready. V'hachein lecha. Get yours right, double. The language is often double just for emphasis. So right, double, not just hikon, not just be prepared, but be prepared, be ready. The double language of putting the two together. Get them all ready. Get all your troops, get them into battle formation, and be prepared, be ready, be watchful. Mi'arim rabim, we're in verse 8, pasuk chet, tifaked ba'acharit hashanim tavo al eretz mishovevet mecherev mikubetzet me'amim rabim al harei Yisrael asher hayu lechorba tamid v'hi me'amim hutza'av yashvu levetach kulam. So in many days, in a long time from now, right? We don't have yet the phrase acharit hayamim, Kates Hayamim, the end of days. We don't have that yet. But here we have a long time from now. This is not something that's going to happen now. A lot of times, right, the great questions with the prophet. Well, he's not true. The prophet's not right. What he said didn't come true. Well, here at least Yechezkel is giving himself a little cover. And he's saying this isn't going to happen right now. This is going to be something that's going to happen in a long time. What does a long time mean? Does it mean a month, a year, a decade, a century, a millennia, 5 millennia? It doesn't say, but this is something that says is going to happen. These apocalyptic, all these nations coming together to be prepared for battle, but it's going to happen in the distant future. You're going to march against the people who have been brought back from the sword, who've been brought back from exile, right? You're going to go and battle and fight against Israel, which for so long was destroyed. It was, and look at those words are used, l'chorbat tamid. It was constantly destroyed, right? But now Israel at that time will not be. Va'alita, and you will come up, sho'ah tavo, ke'anan l'chasot ha'aretz tiyah ata v'chol agapecha v'amim rabim otach. So you're going to come up, you're advancing, you're like a storm, right? You're covering over the earth, right? The image that's oftentimes used for this is sort of like locusts. Here we don't see that they're like locusts. Locust can be seen as sort of a negative, an embarrassing thing, right? You're like locusts attacking the land. Here they're not being told they're like locusts. We're being told that they're like the clouds covering, but it's a huge army that's coming up and going to attack Israel. Continuing in Pasuk Yud, verse 10. So God says, on that day, you're going to have some thoughts, and you're going to have some ideas and some strategies and some plots, things that are not very nice. Things, right? Imagine destruction and horror, exactly, right? So, v'amarta, and what are you going to say? E'ele al eretz pirazot avo hashoktim yoshvei lavetach kulam yoshvim be'ein choma uvriach udlatayim ein lahem. You're going to say, so I'm going to go invade this town, this land. This is a calm people who are living securely, no worries, no problems. And I'm going to go and I'm going to attack them because they're easy to attack. Their cities are not walled, their gates are not closed. This is low-hanging fruit for this marauding army. Lishlol, shalal, vilabos, baz. Why are you going to do it? To take spoil, right? To rape and pillage, basically. Lashiv yadcha al charavot no shavet. Val am meusaf migoyim mosem miknev v'kinyan yoshvei al tabur haaretz. Why are you going to do this? To turn your hand against repopulated places that were wasted are now repopulated against this people who's been gathered, and now they have risen up from the land and they've acquired wealth and right. So this is but they're not a people with a great with this is not a military place. A long time ago I mentioned that Costa Rica doesn't have the army. So right, it's like the attack in Costa Rica. They don't have an army, so attack Costa Rica and steal all of the surfboards and all of the whatever else I can't steal all the whitewater rafts and all the things like that. Shva, we're in 13. Udadan v'sochrei tarshish v'chol kfir yomulacha halishal shalal ataba lavos bazi kalta kalecha laseit kesef v'zahav lakachat miknev v'kinyan l'shlo shalal gadol. So these different people who are merchants, Sheva and Dedan we had mentioned in past chapters also, and all the merchants of Tarshish will say to you, have you come to attack? Is that why you're coming with your hordes to take the gold and the silver and then take our cattle and everything that you have? Okay, that's Gog's plan in the future. Again, the deep future, they're going to come, they're going to want to destroy, they're going to want to attack. So now tell Gog, finally, what is Yechezkel supposed to tell them about this plan that they will have in the future? We're in verse 14, Pasuk Yadal. God says, you should know that when this happens, my people Israel will be living securely, and Teda, they will realize, they will take note of what your plan is. And you're going to come down from the northern reaches. You're living in Antarctica, or what? Not Antarctica, sorry. You're living up in Russia, we'll say. Atav yamim rabim itach rochlei susim kulam kal gadol v'chayil rav. Right, and you're coming again with your huge army, the cloud cover. You're coming in, this huge mighty horde. V'alita alami Yisrael kanan lechasot haaretz. And you'll be again like the cloud that's covering the earth. V'acharit hayamim. In the end of the days, you're going to be coming. Tiyeh v'havioticha al artzi leman dat hagoyim oti b'ktashi v'cha le'eineihem gog. And what's going to happen when you come down? I will bring you to my land, so that the nations will know that I am going to be glorious through Gog. How? Ko amar Adonai Elohim, hatahu asher dibartu biyamim kadmonim biyad avdi navi yisim ahem shanim lavi otcha alehem. This is what God said. Right? You are the one who I spoke of. Right? This is going to happen in the future. We're going to say, you're the ones that I spoke years in those days. Right? 1,000 years, 5,000 years from now, the prophets again are going to say, this is what I spoke about. Vaya bayomahu, verse 18. Bayom ba Gog al admat Yisrael. On the day that Gog comes to Israel. On that day, God says, my rage and my anger will flare up. And we've seen in this book much about God's rage and anger. Most of it in the past has been directed to Israel. Here, it's not saying that it's going to be directed to Israel. V'kinati be'eshevrati dibarti, in verse 19, pasuk Yutet. Imlo bayomahu yarash gadol al amat Yisrael. I've decreed in my fire, in my rage, that on that day a terrible earthquake, a ra'ash, a terrible noise, a terrible sound, terrible destruction will happen in Israel. V'rashu mipnei dagei hayam, the fish of the sea, va'of hashamayim, and the birds of the sky, v'chayat hasadeh, and the beasts of the field, v'chol haremes haromes ha'al adama, and all the creepy things that move on the ground, v'chol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama, and all the man that's on the earth. Mountains will be overthrown, cliffs will topple, every wall will crumble to the ground. Right? It's possible to read that verse and not think of creation, right? The beasts, the animals. We're talking about clouds. We're talking about etc. etc. The karati alav l'chol harei cherev ne'um Adonai Elohim cherev ishbach. And what's going to happen? It's going to be sword against sword. All over the hills. It's going to be fighting. And every man's sword will be turned against another man. V'nishpati oto bedever uvedam v'geshem shotefa avnei al gabish ish v'gafritam tira lav yal agapav yal amim rabim asherito. And I will punish him with pestilence and blood, and there'll be a horrendous rain and hail and fire, right, upon him and his hordes and the many people that he's with. That is upon you, Gog. The sword is going to come to you. Disease is going to come to you. Terrible weather is going to come to you, and destruction is going to happen. And here, what do we have? You'll know these first two words: v'hit gadalti, v'hit kadashti. And now, with your destruction, Gog, I will be seen as great. I will be manifest. My holiness will be manifest, and I will make myself known in the sight of all nations, and they will know that I am God. So, right, and this phrase, vit gadalti, vit kadashti, is of course the words that are used for the phrase yit kadal v'yit kadash. This is one of the places where it comes from. Well, that's one thing at the end, but just a couple things about here. One, again, the theme that we've said so many times, this idea of God being known, God being manifest, right? Think about the whole book. Again, Merkava, God's chariot is gone. God's chariot is destroyed. God is no longer there. God is embarrassed. Bnei Israel's reputation is embarrassed. And so much of this book, therefore, is about Bnei Israel realizing God, first through destruction, and then Bnei Israel realizing God through God's rewards and bringing them back and their success again, and then the nations as well knowing God through the great success. And this is the end of days. This is when it's going to happen, at the end of time. Again, a couple of other things we mentioned before, apocalyptic nature of this. So it's going back to creation stories, it's going back to the early times, the names that are given to us early in Breshit, Magog, Tuval, Meshach. These are names from early on in Bereshit. And one other thing, which we talked about, I think, back in the book of Shmuel, although I don't remember. In the book of Shmuel, there's a character, Agag. Agag is the king of Amalek. Agag is posed by somebody named Shaul. When Shaul is made king, if you remember what happens, is Shmuel takes him up to the roof. He takes him up to the Gog. When you're on the Gog, when you're on the roof, when you're Agag, you're the head of Amalek, there's only one place to go, unless you're Eliyahu, and then God takes you up in a chariot of fire. But outside of Eliyahu, there's only one place to go when you're on top, which is not further to the top. You can only fall down. And so Gog, Magog, this idea, they're on the Gog, they're on the roof, they're on the top, they're the preeminent civilization, they're the people who think they're the best. And something that we talked about in these past chapters when we talked about Mitzrayim. Oh, you think you're so great, Mitzrayim, Pharaoh with your great civilization. Oh, Sidon, Tzor, more than Sidon, you're so great, you're so wealthy. When you think you're great, when you think on the top of the world, civilizations rise and they fall. And so God says here in the end of days, there's going to be a civilization, a nation that is so great, and they're going to come to battle, and they think they're going to take over a little nation. And that's when God says, I will be glorified and magnified, because the only way it can be understood that their destruction is going to happen against my people Israel is it's going to be clear to everyone by me for the sake of God.